Everyone. For those who don't know me, I am Holly Trantham, TFD's creative director. And this is the totally chill guide to work and life. So for the past 8 years, I've been working behind the scenes on all of the content you see here on YouTube and elsewhere on TFD's channels. And I also wrote our second book, Beyond Getting By, which is coming out this April. Throughout this series, I'm going to dive into some of the topics I go into even more in depth in the book. All about how to approach your work and your money from a totally chill place, where they help you live the life you want without ever becoming your sole focus. So this first episode is all about how to stop wasting money on things that don't match your values and don't actively add to your life. And a big part of matching your spending with your values is to learn to embrace delayed gratification, which is what investing is all about. But of course, that's easier said than done. And you can embrace delayed gratification when your investing is automated, because you can trick your brain into thinking that you never had that money to spend to begin with. And with Betterment, sustaining the habit of investing for the long term is made easy. Betterment is the investing and savings app that puts your money to work and your mind at ease. With their expert-built ETF portfolios, you are automatically diversified across thousands of stocks and bonds at once. Your money can multitask in the background while you do literally anything else. Plus, their automated investing tech and tax-smart tools are designed to help maximize your returns, so you can feel secure knowing your money is putting in the work. Get started, be invested. Go to betterment.com/TFD or click the link in this video's description to sign up in minutes. Your future self will thank you. So let's start with a really big question for this one. Why do we keep continuing to buy things thinking they're going to make us happy, but knowing that's not actually the case? Not to start on a really bleak note, but Americans as a whole are pretty unhappy. We are more isolated than ever before, but we're also constantly being sold products that make our lives more convenient, which I would argue in turn only further compounds our isolation. In a 2023 Meta Gallup survey, 24% of people ages 15 and older self-reported feeling very or fairly lonely, with young adults aged 19 to 29 having the highest rates. And at the same time, we are consuming more than ever before. And of course, nowhere is this more evident than what we see on social media. Whether it's Shein haul videos, restock with me's, or the influencer opening her cabinet of like 20 different Stanley cups in different colors. We are inundated with the idea that overconsumption is both normal and expected. And with the rise of being able to spend money directly in apps like with TikTok and Instagram Shop, there are simply fewer barriers to spending than ever before, to the point where we are just desensitized to being able to buy whatever we want, whenever we want it. And we continue to buy things as an answer to our woes. We are always influenced by others, whether it's through social media or through our real offline lives, who we perceive as doing better than us, even when that's not necessarily the reality, because our perception of how they're doing is just completely influenced by what they buy. So what actually makes us happier? Here's a quick excerpt from the book. As part of the Harvard study of adult development, one of the longest studies of adult life in the world, researchers followed a group of men and eventually their offspring for over 80 years. They found one overwhelming factor that predicted long and happy lives: close relationships. A different report from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found autonomy, aka the feeling that your life, its activities, and habits are self-chosen and self-endorsed, to be the key factor in determining happiness. Of course, we have to be able to meet our basic needs before we can feel really in control of our lives. I love that TikTok meme going around that's like, if I won the lottery, I wouldn't tell anyone, but there would be signs, and there's just slides of people like going to the dentist and like therapy and the doctor. And I would argue that a major factor contributing to our unhappiness is our cultural obsession with cheapness. So there's an old-ish saying that you can get things cheap, fast, or good, but never all three at the same time. Like within the Venn diagram of those three circles, the middle doesn't exist. You can buy things cheaply and quickly, or quickly and well-made, or well-made and cheaply. But you can't get things that are high quality, coming to you really quickly, and really cheap. And at this point in American culture, we are really obsessed with cheap and fast. We don't even expect good anymore. We love getting things on sale and always getting the biggest bang for our buck, to the point where many of us feel entitled to always get the cheapest option possible while acquiring as much as we want. And then when our clothes or our shoes or our furniture falls apart after just a few uses, or maybe a few years, we don't think twice about it because buying a replacement isn't that expensive, right? Take the rise of Shein, for instance. While high-end designers release collections seasonally, fast fashion brands typically operate on a 52-week cycle. Each week is a new season rather than each quarter. But Shein, an online-only retailer based in China, doesn't just list new clothing items on a weekly basis. According to The Guardian, as of April 2022, they were estimated to be listing up to 10,000 new items per day having surpassed Amazon as the most downloaded app in 2021. Shein's annual revenue was $23 billion in 2022, and it's projected to grow to $60 billion by 2025. And it should be noted that the US is not the only country that Shein markets to, but it is the biggest market for Shein in terms of revenue. And when we're talking about cheapness, we have to look at our relationship with the abundance mindset. So a lot of financial and honestly life advice talks about the abundance mindset, which to me is somewhat of a double-edged sword. Because I think there's somewhat of a misunderstanding about what an abundance mindset is supposed to be. Because when it comes to shopping, for instance, some people would think an abundance mindset means you have to try to buy as much as possible, especially when there's a low price to lock in. Because while it is certainly true that there are plenty of people in the United States who can only really afford to buy clothing at the rock bottom prices that Shein offers, for many others, the allure of retailers like Shein or Temu is that they are so cheap, and they can buy as much as they want without spending nearly what they would at other retailers. And I'm sorry, but anybody who spends $500 on a haul from Shein filled with wardrobe items that are going to fall apart after 3 laundry cycles is someone who can also afford to upgrade to brands that make things that are built to last. And I think that this entitlement to always buy things as cheaply as possible is honestly cheapening us on a spiritual level. Chelsea has talked plenty on this channel about the macro level badness that brands like Shein are perpetuating when it comes to things like worker exploitation and the impact on the environment. I would like to add that when we become accustomed to paying these prices, anything that costs more is just going to seem like a ripoff. It makes us truly believe that our consumer habits are integral to our way of life. And if the cost is exploiting factory workers who may be impoverished and exploiting the environment too, then that's simply the way it has to be. And yet buying more is not even making us happier. Buying as much as you can, like those influencers spending $500 at a time on Shein hauls, is not living abundantly, it's living excessively. And it is the definition of letting FOMO control your life. And this is just another side of the same coin as living scarcely. When you act in fear that there isn't enough time, money, experiences to go around, you feel like you have to jump on opportunities whenever they come to you, which sometimes means spending more than you ever need to or even want to on a fast fashion haul just because the prices were incredible and you couldn't pass it up. A real abundance mindset means knowing that there will always be enough. If you don't buy this pair of boots right now, there will be other pairs of boots in the future. And it's also really important to remember that being cheap when it comes to material items can always cost us more in the long run, especially when we use the excuse of a price point to justify our habits of overconsumption. We did a video a while ago on cost per use, and I think that that's a really important concept to internalize. A $10 top that you wear twice costs you $5 per wear, whereas a $100 top that you wear 100 times costs you $1 per wear. But consuming less does not always have to mean buying more expensive items. It can simply mean to start getting a really solid grasp on what you already own. Because when we think of consuming less, we often think of the opposite of that as being constantly purging what we have. And it's great to get rid of things that don't bring you joy, as they say. But being in a place where you're able to constantly get rid of several bags of clothing every season or every year means you might still be stuck in that cycle of overconsumption. I personally do my big annual clean out with my husband every January, and this year I was really excited that we got rid of a lot less than last year because I think it means overall we bought a lot less. Adopting a more minimalist lifestyle is only really making a big statement if the person who is doing it was in a place where they were overconsuming a ton in the first place. And living with less can absolutely be freeing, but don't get rid of things just because you happened to at one time purchase something from a brand like Shein. Making use of what we already have is absolutely the best way to consume less and less mindlessly, and ultimately spend less. And most of us already aren't wearing what we own. According to a poll from Stitch Fix UK, researchers surveyed 2,000 adults and found people have an average of $268.44 worth of unworn clothes in their closets. According to the survey, only 6% of people have actually worn everything in their wardrobe at least once. So how can you stop over-consuming in your own life, especially when it comes to things that you don't even like, and adopt a real abundance mindset? I've personally always advocated for combing through your bank and credit card statements and literally highlighting every purchase you either regret making or don't even remember. And this can be really tedious, but I do think it is important to tangibly confront your own spending habits. You can then start to categorize your spending habits based on a scale of mindless to intentional. And this is an activity that we put in the book, which I'll share here. Mindless consumption is often the spending decisions we make simply because we were influenced, whether by social media or our IRL social circles. And I would argue that mindless purchases are often the ones we regret the most, and they would fall on the left side of this matrix. And when it comes to intentional spending, this does not always mean spending a ton of money. Frugal purchases can absolutely be intentional. And this doesn't just need to apply to material items. Look at your spending on experiences too. Do you regret ever going to any restaurants, social outings, exercise classes, trips, pop-up museums that were built purely for Instagram, etc.? So definitely categorize those expenses too. And from a big picture perspective, you can work towards clarifying your own values and aiming to align your spending decisions and your overall finances with them as much as possible. In the book, I share this core values exercise, but you can also find these online. Essentially, you just identify what is most important to you, and you then categorize your current spending habits based on those values. For instance, living in a walkable place is one of the things I value most. So when I'm spending more money on Ubers and taxis, I feel genuinely like my spending is not as in line with my values as I'd like it to be. And you can also use your previous purchases to help you identify your values if you're feeling stuck. For instance, if you have identified that you never regret buying the coffee and pastry from the local coffee shop that is a little bit farther away and a little bit more expensive than the Starbucks on your block, that might tell you that you really value investing in your local community or in food experiences. You want to decide if your spending is actually reflective of what's important to you, rather than trying to spend to keep up with the constant influx of messaging that we need to keep getting as much as possible, as cheaply as possible, especially when those purchases might not even line up with who you are. The goal here is to allow these exercises to help you inform your spending decisions going forward, and eventually arrive at a place where you don't even have to think twice about a purchase before knowing if it's going to be worth it to you, because you have internalized what your values are. Feeling like you have wasted money and often time on things that you don't really care about sucks. But ultimately, feeling more in control of your spending habits is going to be a key factor in living a happier life. Aim to break out of the system that tells you that buying more and more and as cheaply as possible is what's going to make you happy, because it's not. It's just feeling FOMO. And loosening the grasp that that has on you is so freeing. Thank you so much for watching, and remember that I dive into these topics a lot more deeply in our new book, Beyond Getting By, which you can pre-order at the link in our description. And be sure to tune in next week for the next episode of the Totally Chill Guide to Work and Life.